The 18th century philosopher Gabriel Bono de Mably once wrote that the virtues and vices of a people at the time when any revolution happens in their government are the measure of the liberty or slavery which they ought to expect. Ride to Hell Retribution is a misunderstood masterpiece, a timely reminder in the goodness of the common man and the free spirit that cannot be curtailed under the whims of the military-industrial complex. Our central protagonist, the aptly named Jake Conway, embodies this psychosocial liberation of the quasi-pontificatedly abstracted monomyth that is so key to understanding the deep philosophical commentary on this tragically poignant Ride to Hell. What do any of those words mean? I haven't the faintest. I'm just saying it to make myself sound more intelligent than you. This video will be an exploration of a game that may have once been relegated to the trash-to-pieces of yesteryear, or unfairly maligned to the bargain bins of a bygone era, but I am here to reveal unto you that Ride to Hell Retribution is rather an affirmation of game design principles that transcends the genre, and a story that touches on the deep emotional core that is intrinsic to us all. But before we get into that, let us all take a moment, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, to remind ourselves that we are not responsible for any of our actions, and all problems in the world come back to late-stage capitalism. It's important we push back against that. So that is why I'm delighted to introduce today's sponsor, Raid Space Betternaut. Our titular agent on this Ride to Hell is Jake Conway, a man full of retribution with a machismo to match. Unlike many of his contemporaries, however, this was not a product of patriarchal oppression of the era, for, you see, you don't understand when he rescues women from being assaulted in alleyways and then has sex with them, he is actually a spirit of the classic gentleman and deeply respecting of their agency. It's not just in matters of the feminine persuasion, however, where our man Jake asserts himself. No, for he is quite the family man, and how he's formed deep emotional bonds with his Uncle Mac and his little brother Matt. Nick. No, Walter? Mikey, that's it. Carrying the deep emotional scars from his service in the Vietnam War, we see a return to the masculine Freudian Übermensch when Conway finally takes to the road. The conveniently placed trash and building debris is important to note here, because our man Jake would have once seen this in Vietnam too. Sadly, our brothers in both arms and bikes are not able to be left alone by the fascist culture of post-Vietnam America, as we can see in the arrival of these thugs. As you can clearly see, this guy is bald, and I once met a fascist who was bald, so clearly they must be the same. Not even Rockstar Games at their zenith could have crafted such a timeless masterpiece as the confrontation that would soon follow, as our brother Mikey is sadly taken before his time. But because the emotional sensitivity of our lead character is at an all-time high following his brother's death, it is here where Jake reveals his softer side by beating up squatters. Blissfully free of white guilt, he also engages in some cross-culture diplomacy to subvert the traditional masculine role with the black woman here, and not at all problematic representation of Hispanic peoples. It is here, during the chase with the first of his enemies, that one can see a bike veer off to the left side of the road, thus demonstrating that these rival bikers are capable of change and political enlightenment, as they too veer for the left in the process. Once again asserting himself as the hero of the common woman, Jake takes this opportunity to pay a wife-beater back in kind. Impressed by this display of masculine violence, Jake enjoys his reward as a woman who's been repeatedly beaten by her partner would understandably immediately jump to rewarding him with sex. One thing that is important to pay attention to here is is that the developers masterfully avoid the common pitfall around the male gaze by ensuring that all fornications take place with both parties' clothes on. Truly, Jake Conway is the modern gentleman redefined. Locked and loaded for the great moral struggle ahead, we see Jake revisit the trauma of his past by shooting these random targets, not unlike the Viet Cong that the US military-industrial complex had conditioned to see them as only a short time before. With Mac's approval, our hero walks the ride to hell as he enacts his bloody retribution. It is here when the masterful ludo-narrative harmony of the game truly comes into play. When I rightfully posited this game as a postmodern masterpiece, which, by the way, you're wrong and should be ashamed of yourself if you dare to disagree with me, Retribution subverts the modernist paradigm of needing good gameplay or even a remotely decent level of quality in any respect, because the shooting mechanics here are deliberately bad on purpose. You see, the shooting has no impact and various goons fall over with little fanfare because the developers clearly understood this was fertile ground to revisit Jake's experiences in the war just as it was mowing down the Vietnamese. He takes no delight in the violence, of course. All of this is to simply avenge his brother Mikey, and by the time we are finally caught up to this living embodiment of the toxically masculine fascist that is rife within Western culture, both Jake and the player rightfully give the bald guy what he deserves. Truly, a dramatic crescendo that would have moved Shakespeare himself to tears. Sadly, our reluctant quasi-anti-hero Bolognese pastiche and the dramatic fulcrum on which this timeless masterpiece turns cannot simply hang up his gun after copping a few murder charges. No, his job is not yet done, and the developers saw fit to remind us here as the bike veers off to the right once more, clearly hinting at the right-wing demonic child sacrifice that is present within America of current day. The saturated, almost orange color grading of this level was perhaps a warning about the threat that the United States would soon face. That Eutechnics was warning us about Trump, just like Vito Corleone in The Godfather, who once picked up some oranges at one time too. Unlike the lone, unmanned bike destined to crash into the wall just as with many of us, Jake Conway reasserts his powerful yet humbled masculine presence and is able to shake off veering too far to the right side of the road, and thus his political leanings in the process. Fittingly, our hero, who has previously rescued many a woman in distress, returns to make contact with that random black chick from earlier in the aptly named Damsel in Undress mission. After being rescued from the domineering and lecherous customers to her cries that she was already a married woman, the developers subvert the audience's expectations once more by poetically rewarding Jake with sex in a way that absolutely does not demean her in the process. Move aside Naughty Dog in The Last of Us Part 2, for we are witnessing true cinema in the making. After successfully stealing a tanga, we can once again see the deftly handled social commentary that is at the heart of Ride to Hell Retribution, for the cops in pursuit quickly break off chase from our modern Hercules. Here we can see the textures of the police officer pop in, which serves to demonstrate the chameleon-like nature of all police officers, and that there is little substance to any of them behind the badge they serve. Reborn in the fires of war and not at all domestic terrorism, our hero cleanses the fascist corruption from the heart of the desert here, and is baptized in the waters below. It is enough to bring any man, Christian or infidel, to tears. This game truly never fails to amaze. Our hero reluctantly walks the warpath once again, and as our enemy's drug empire burns up around him, we pursue the aptly named Colt into the ruins of an aviation empire, not unlike Beowulf once did with Medusa at the end of Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Despite the previously aforementioned before burning of said drugs, Jake Conway shows his commitment to cleaning up the streets in the honor of his little brother Mikey by picking up more drugs as he goes. When our two dramatic foils make their final stand on the ramp of the plane, invoking the imagery of Nathan Drake in that one set piece from Uncharted 3 that was paying homage to Ride to Hell, Colt finally meets his end, and Jake Conway becomes the mass-murdering hero that he was always destined to be. One couldn't have asked for a more dramatic finale. Scorsese, eat your heart out. Oh yeah, and he kills some other people too before the end. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm an aspiring games journalist, I'll have you know. Is there a way to turn the difficulty down? And my opinion was formed prior to even playing the game. What were you expecting from me? Integrity. Ride to Hell Retribution is as subversive as the day is long, a masterpiece that transcends the socio-political, nigh on spiritual teachings of the quasi-fascist, Western-dominated ecosphere that never found its moment in the spotlight it so rightfully deserves. In an era saturated with sexually domineering, parasitic white men, Jake Conway shows his softer, more emotionally intelligent side by taking advantage of women who were being assaulted only a few moments before, and shows that just because you served in the army doesn't mean you have to stop killing once back in the US. The death of his brother Cornelius, or Nathaniel, may have served as the catalyst for this allegorical exploration into the plight of the common man under the whims of disaffected youth and the satanic panic brought on by rock music and Dungeons and Dragons. Yet, Jake Conway emerges unscathed from this debacle. The gameplay is almost poignant in how it seems to throw itself at our hero, yet he is able to overcome this symbolic obstacle time and time again. Really, whether man or woman, there is a little something for everyone to aspire to in Jake Conway. This is one ride to hell you won't ever want to leave, and the only retribution to be found is in the just. My final score is 11 out of 10, because there simply hasn't been a game before or since that has so remarkably captured the ludo-narrative mumbo-jumbo that I whisper to myself at night while I stave off crippling loneliness. Deep Silver and you Technics should take a bow, because Ride to Hell Retribution beats out even Rambo the video game in the finest this medium has to offer. Frankly, we should cancel the Game Awards, because this is Game of the Year every year.